everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. We are excited today to be back talking hidden gems, and today it is a new member of the streaming services. Literally this week, they are starting HBO Max, and so we thought it would be fun to go through their list of films that they're starting with, and each pick 5 films that we think maybe are a little lesser known, a little bit more of a hidden gem than your big superhero properties and your other things like that. And so this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Ryan is here.
Hey, Rachel, so nice to hear your voice, and I want to say thank you to everyone who is tuning in to the Hidden Gems podcast. I'm super excited to be here today. I mean, I'm always excited to talk to you, Rachel. You've become one of my favorite people, but I'm excited today because we get to break new ground on HBO Max. And out of all the streaming services we've covered, this may be the one that I'm the most excited for, because I've just been reading and poring over articles about HBO Max for a few days now, and I'm just like, we are getting an avalanche of content. It's just an embarrassment of riches. We were going back and forth and messaging each other, and I was like, man, this is probably the most difficult list I've ever had to make. There were some tough cuts, and we were very spoiled for choice. But I'm confident in my 5 picks. I'm sure you're confident in your 5 picks, and we are going to have some fun today. So, in the words of the wise philosopher Tony Stark, drop your socks and grab your Crocs, because we're going to get wet on this ride.
Very well said. Yes. I was very skeptical because I'm not normally an HBO watcher, so I didn't think that I would be signing up for HBO Max. I don't watch things like Game of Thrones. I did watch Pretty Little Lies the first season, then started the second season, then got bored with it. But for the most part, those kinds of series are not for me. A little, I don't know, they just don't interest me, and the mature content is a turnoff for me. And so I don't tend to watch a lot of HBO original programming. And so I just assumed that, I'm not going to want to get this HBO Max. But then I started hearing things. I heard about the anime that they were getting, particularly Studio Ghibli. And that made me really excited because I love Studio Ghibli. And I have them all on DVD, but they're not available streaming in any other way. And so the idea of having them available, in a streaming kind of situation is very appealing to me. And not only Studio Ghibli, but a bunch of other anime that are basically working with Crunchyroll to bring, which is a big anime site, to bring all of this anime to us. And so that was, that's interesting. And then I saw about all the Sesame Street stuff, and I just finished Muppet May. So I'm a huge fan of the Muppets, even Sesame Street. And so that was intriguing. Elmo's going to have a talk show. You can't go wrong with that. And then I found out about their classics library, and that is something streaming services have almost always failed at, is classics. So I was like,
it's like with Netflix, it's like they have like a handful of like older stuff. It's threadbare pretty much.
Yeah, very
Amazon
little.
Prime is very much a coin toss.
Yeah.
And Disney Plus has all of their older movies, but that's all old Disney movies, and maybe some people may just not be into that.
Yeah.
However, just looking over the list of all the older movies they're going to have, like Citizen Kane and Gone with the Wind, and all of the Showa era Godzilla movies, and it never ended. And it was just like, they have way too many Criterion Collection movies, too much to like shake a stick at.
Yeah, we're doing a similar podcast to this over on the Criterion Project this week, where Conrado and I pick out 3 of the Criterion selections from HBO Max to talk about, because I'm frankly kind of worried for the Criterion channel, because I couldn't believe how many Criterion films they had on HBO Max. Like, really, I think you have to be pretty hardcore to to sign up for the Criterion channel when you could get that many Criterion films available on HBO Max. And if I wasn't doing the podcast, I would probably unsubscribe from Criterion channel. So that was really impressive. And so they won me over. I subscribed to HBO Max. I did not think I was going to, and they won me over. So way to go.
It's a really good mix of all of the stuff that I love. I
Yeah.
never thought I would want a streaming service that had Citizen Kane and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on it in the same place. But
Yeah.
but I live in a time where that exists. You know, complain all you want about 2020, but I have lived long enough to have seen a streaming service where you can watch the works of Orson Welles next to the work of Will Smith before he became big.
That's
like,
right.
I have officially made it.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, it's true. It's a good time to be alive. At least as a TV and movie home viewer.
we should be grateful.
Yes. Well, very good. So we're going to have 5 picks each that we're going to talk about on HBO Max. Let us know your picks and what you're excited about. And so the first one for me is a classic from 1938. We're going to talk about Bringing Up Baby. Bringing Up Baby is probably the most iconic screwball comedy that was ever made, with Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn, and basically it's about this woman who is just a mess. Like, everything is disaster all around her, and she ends up helping this really neurotic museum curator or whatever. They have to take this cheetah with them to get this donation, this big donation for or leopard. I'm sorry, leopard. I always get those confused. It's a leopard. They have to take this leopard named Baby to on this road trip, and it's ridiculous, but it's really funny, and they have great chemistry, and he just keeps getting more and more irritated along the way, but you know that they're also like really attracted to each other in the same breath, and it's one of the classics, one of the greats.
Yes, I've heard nothing but good things about this movie all my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be reviewing it for my big series on my channel, the AFI Project, and it's wedged in between 12 Angry Men and The Sixth Sense on that list. So that shows you where that is on that particular list.
Yeah.
But it's definitely made me more excited to see that movie finally, because I have become a huge Cary Grant movie.
Yeah.
I've got To Catch a Thief on my Amazon Prime watch list, and one of my favorite movies is North by Northwest,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the more famous Hitchcock movies ever made and my personal favorite.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like a really, really solid movie, and it sounds really good.
And Cary Grant, he a lot of times played sort of the same role of sort of your dashing leading man kind of a thing. But in this, he's a little bit more of a nerdy variation of that. So it's kind of fun to see him with that. And they're just so great together. And the situations get more and more ridiculous as they're dealing with this leopard. And so that is my first pick. What is your first pick?
So my first pick comes from the very recent year of 1921. I shall allow the joke to settle.
Right.
And it is called The Kid. This is from Charlie Chaplin, and it is a silent film. It tells the story of, of Charlie Chaplin's character, the Little Tramp, or just the Tramp. I've heard both versions of it. People call it the Little Tramp, and some people call it just the Tramp. I call it just the Tramp, just for the sake of simplicity. But he basically lives in squalor and he's just trying to get by. However, he soon discovers that there's a baby there, and he picks up the baby, takes him in, and takes care of him to the best of his ability. Cut forward to years later, and they've opened up a business where they go around and throw rocks through people's windows and then go around the block and come back and say, "Hey, you need a window fix?" So they were the original charlatans, I guess you could say. But conversely, the baby's mother, who had to give up her baby, goes on to become a big Hollywood star. Now she has money and fame, and she goes to look for the baby that she gave up. And so the movie does what a lot of good Charlie Chaplin movies do, introduce this moral dilemma. That's what they did in City Lights, and that's what they did for the kid. Uh, should the man take care of the child, despite the fact that he wasn't exactly a wonderful father, but he did the best he could, and so it raises a lot of moral stuff, but the big thing to take away about the kid is that it is hysterically funny. If you're just getting into silent films, or if you want to get into silent films, this is probably the best way to get into it. It's the first silent film I've ever watched, and I've loved it, and I've seen it several times after the fact. After I saw The Kid, I started getting into more like silent gangster films and silent horror films, and your cabinets of Dr. Caligari's and Nosferatu and etc. The Kid was essentially my gateway drug into silent films.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen this. I've seen Modern Lights, and I've seen The Circus, and
You
uh,
mean City Lights, but there is a Chaplin movie called Modern Times, which is
yeah,
also excellent.
I've seen that. That's what I meant. Modern Times. Sorry, Modern
No, no,
Times.
that's okay.
And
Modern Times is excellent too.
yes,
So
that's the one that I've seen. That's the one where he's working on on the assembly line.
yeah,
Yeah,
I have a feeling that may have influenced that famous scene in I Love Lucy where they get
yeah,
overwhelmed by the chocolates.
yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that one's funny. I enjoyed that, but I haven't seen a ton of Chaplin, and but this one sounds like a good one.
Yeah, I've been on a real Chaplin kick as of late. I just reviewed City Lights over my channel, wink
Mm,
wink nudge nudge. And I've got to watch The Circus and The Gold Rush for the AFI project, so I'm going to be wading deep into the Chaplin waters, I guess you could say.
nice. Yeah, I watched The Circus last year as part of Criterion Project, one of the up there of that podcast. So yeah, and I liked that. And he's so expressive with his eyes and with just his facial features, and I think that helps a lot.
A Charlie Chaplin movie resembles more like ballet than actual cinema. If you've ever seen ballet, the dancers are very expressive, with their bodies.
Hmm.
They're twirling, they're running their hands on objects. They have very expressive faces because it's not like they can say, "Hey, let's do some dialogue now." No, they've got to express everything through their motions and their actions. Charlie Chaplin understood this, and that's why he's so fondly remembered to this day.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's why the movies are so timeless. I've seen a little bit more of Buster Keaton because I had a Buster Keaton collection that I watched in. I also have a Marx Brothers collection, so I've seen some of those, but I haven't seen as much Chaplin as I should see.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I've seen most of Chaplin's work, but I just recently watched The General for the AFI project,
Hmm.
I have Duck Soup coming up, but I haven't seen any of Mark's all that much.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good stuff. All right, well, very good choice. My next choice is moving up to 1948, so we're really making a big jump with The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And
Directed by John Huston.
yes, and written by him. If you are a fan of The Revenant, then
Which I am.
then you should see this movie because it is very similar. I would be surprised if Inarritu was not heavily influenced by The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. It's a very similar show. I think much better, but I liked The Revenant fine. But I just think the characters are more interesting here than there. You have Humphrey Bogart playing a man who's trying to find gold in Mexico, and he ends up sort of getting a group of, there's 2 or 3 of them, and going up to the Sierra Madres in Mexico and trying to find gold. And basically, it's about how this quest for gold kind of makes him go crazy, makes him go nuts. And the isolation, the passion, the intensity, all of that, and he's, by the end, he does things that he never would have thought to do. And I think it's actually probably a pretty good movie to watch during quarantine because it's all about how, like, kind of being by yourself or being with small numbers makes you crazy. So
Yeah, I was going to say.
so it could be somewhat therapeutic, I think. I was very fortunate. They had it as one of the Turner Classic Movie of the Month a couple of years ago, and so I actually got to see it on the big screen. And it's just such a really good movie. I think the script is really good, and I think the acting is excellent, and the characters are very well done. And it's great.
I have a fun little John Huston fact. John Huston, to my knowledge, is the only man to direct his father and his daughter to Oscar wins. Walter Huston, John's father, won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and he would also direct his daughter, who just so happens to be Angelica Huston, who has been in way too many movies to count, but up until recently, she was in John Wick Chapter 3 as the Russian woman, and I can't remember her name at the minute, but she runs like the ballet place, and she ultimately gets taken out. But she ended up winning her Academy Award for the movie Prezi's Honor. So I just found that to be fascinating stuff. Also, John Huston directed The Maltese Falcon, which is just an incredible movie.
Mm-hmm. He is a very talented family, evidently.
Apparently, yeah.
like the Barrymores, but the Hustons, yeah, and he's very good in this film. And I don't know, it's just an interesting study of how far will we go, how much of we start out being these outstanding moral citizens and thinking, oh, we would never be tempted to go that far to do that, but would we? And that's kind of what the questions that it asks. And so it's a really good film. And
plus I have a feeling Humphrey Bogart never slept in a horse carcass.
Right. Yes. And I don't know. To me, the problem I had with The Revenant, even though I like it fine, was I felt like it was very repetitive. I felt like it just kind of made the same point over and over and again. By the time I was like, okay, we get it. They're jerks. Let's move on. Whereas I think the character study is a lot more nuanced about these characters than in The Revenant.
I will give you that. But you can't go wrong with Tom Hardy. He plays a really good jerk.
Yeah.
We should finish him off quick.
Yes. So what's your next choice?
So my next choice, I'm jumping a little further ahead in the timeline, but not by much. We're talking about The Adventures of Robin Hood. This is just a masterpiece of a movie. It's the best Robin Hood movie ever made. Or in terms of live action. It starred Basil Rathbone as Guy Gisborne, but the movie is absolutely made by Errol Flynn, who is just one of the best actors of his time. He This is based on the Robin Hood legend of the same name, and this was made during a time when color movies were incredibly rare. Most of the movies made were done in black and white. This was the first Robin Hood movie to be made in color, and oh wow, the color in this movie is just phenomenal. It still holds up to this day. Um, the castle set may be one of my favorite sets of all time. It's just such a fun movie. It's just a swashbuckling adventure. When I think of swashbuckle, I think of the Adventures of Robin Hood. It distills and captures every piece of Robin Hood lore that you could ever want in a Robin Hood movie in this movie. Do you want to see Robin Hood get into sword fights? It's in here. Do you want to see Robin Hood, shoot bows and arrows? You get that in here as well. Do you want to see a menacing Guy Gisborne? You get that in there as well. He's played by Basil Rathbone, as I mentioned, and wow, he is really good in this too. The final fight between them is one of my favorite final fights in movie history. Like, it's just the two of them just swinging swords for a solid 5 straight minutes. It's just a wonderful movie. I feel like I'm rambling again, but there you go. When I get on a roll. But at the end of the day, The Adventures of Robin Hood is the best live action Robin Hood movie that we will probably ever get.
Yeah. I mean, your favorite isn't the Taron Egerton, Jamie Foxx?
Dear God, that movie was bad.
Yeah, it was terrible.
That was horrible.
It was so bad. And so, yes, I completely agree with you. I think it's kind of similar to, I feel like, The Wizard of Oz, where it's just like, okay, we got it. And every attempt since then hasn't really worked.
Yeah,
But
they've tried to contour it towards what the trend going in movies at the time was. Like in the late 70s, they made one called Robin and Marion, which starred Sean Connery, where they aged up Robin and Marion and showed what their lives were like after Robin Hood's days were over. There was Robin Hood from 2010, directed by Ridley Scott, which was basically, it stripped everything away, all the legends and everything, and just made him just a generic freedom fighter that wasn't even a freedom fighter until the very last scene of the movie.
yeah.
And then, of course, we have the Taron Egerton one, which was just god awful. And it was clear that the director had watched 300 one too many times and thought, oh, hey, it's not the story that actually makes this movie good. It's the slow-mo, fast-mo action.
Right.
No, you got that completely backwards and you have outkicked your coverage. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I hate that movie so much.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
And Taron Egerton is a good actor too, and to see him in that muck, and with Jamie Foxx too. I love Jamie Foxx. I'm going to stop myself.
And it wasn't bad enough to be campy and campy fun. It wasn't that kind of, at least for me, it wasn't that kind of film. Like, it was sort of taking itself a little bit seriously. It was trying to be like an epic adventure. It wasn't trying to be sort of campy. Then I might have forgiven it. I mean,
at least the Kevin Costner one knew what it was.
Yeah, there's like a little bit more camp, but yeah, the Kevin Costner one, I mean, he's terrible in it. It's fine. I mean, Alan Rickman is always great. I would not watch it with children though. It's too violent, in my opinion.
You can hear Kevin Costner give up the English accent in real time. That's
Like, I hear people suggest it as a family movie thing, and I'm like, no way. I would not watch it with Prince of Thieves. I would not watch it with children. There's like a whole rape scene. I mean, I don't know. But but yeah, and then you have the Disney, and you have the classic Men in Tights, Mel Brooks.
Which is definitely underrated,
Yeah,
especially the Men in Tights music number.
yeah,
It's such an earworm because I'll just like be washing dishes and I'll be like, "We're men, manly men. We're men in tights. Da
yeah,
da da
yeah,
da.
yeah,
We're always going around searching for fights."
yeah, yeah. So, but I do love this original one. It's so entertaining. It's got everything that you could want in a movie. It's got the action, and it's got the sword fighting. It's got the romance. It's got, I mean, it's just got it all.
It really does.
Yeah, good choice. All right. Well, my third choice is moving up a bit in timeline. They're going to have all of this Batman and all of this DC on HBO Max, but the one that's the hidden gem of them all is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. This was a spin-off of the animated series, which was excellent. Batman the
Oh
Animated
yeah,
Series.
the best superhero animated series ever made, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I mean, I love X-Men the Animated Series, but you wouldn't have had that without Batman the Animated Series, and it's yeah, it's one of the best TV shows of all time, if you were going to ask me. And and so Batman Mask of the Phantasm basically takes all of that from the show and makes it into a movie. And you could definitely say it was just a longer episode of the show. Yes, but it's such a good show that I'm fine with that. And I think what it does so well, this movie, compared to any other version of Batman that I've ever seen, at least, is that I think it fleshes out Bruce's character in a way that you really don't get, except for a little bit in Batman Begins. That you have, you understand why he's doing what he's doing, and I think his motivations are just really, really clear. And here, because you have this romance between him and Andrea Beaumont, that really is just such a powerful backstory. And you have some really great dialogue in the film, especially between him and Alfred when he's talking about walking that line between good and evil, and how worried Alfred is that he's going to fall. And I think that works really well. I think the score is wonderful. Shirley Walker does such a great job, and then also I think the animation is really beautiful. The way they use shadow and color and light, I think, is very well done. So I think it's one that if you are a Batman fan, you've probably seen it. But if you're an average film goer, you probably haven't seen it, because it kind of came and went in theaters, and it's just not one that people talk about all the time, like Batman v Superman or some of these other films. And it's way better than those films. And so if you haven't seen it, you should totally watch it.
Yeah, this movie is just, we don't deserve it. That's how good it is,
Yeah.
because it's like this movie came out in 1992, if my memory serves me right. It was smack dab in the middle of Batman the Animated Series' run. They could have so easily made it just an hour and 30-minute commercial for the series, but
Right.
they didn't. They had legit growth. They had a unique villain that had never been explored in any other Batman movie. And what I love the most about it is that it's surprisingly adult. This came out during a time when Joel Schumacher had just taken over the Batman movies, and they were starting to introduce Jim Carrey wearing skin tight green jumpsuits,
Right.
and the normally demure Tommy Lee Jones is trying to chew the scenery and failing miserably, and there's failed romances and bad credit cards, and it was becoming a headache. It was becoming childish. Ironically, the animated series meant for kids was more adult than the stuff made for adults. That's the stuff that I've always loved about Batman the Animated Series, and Mask of the Phantasm for that matter, because Mask of the Phantasm has some of the scariest imagery I've ever seen in any Batman related material, period.
Yeah.
Like when Batman sees the death of the gangster voiced by Abe Vigoda and you see his body, you're just like, good Lord, that's going to scar kids for life. And then the final scene where the Joker dies and the model city of Gotham is exploding, and he just gives that last laugh where he just starts cackling with laughter. It just, oh wow, it's just that's the good stuff. That is
Yeah.
the good stuff right there.
It's so true. And it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's never brought up in the discussion of great Batman movies. And I think that it does an even better job than The Dark Knight does in fleshing out Bruce's character as a person and his choices. Whereas I feel like in a lot of other versions of Batman, the villains are way more interesting and memorable than Batman.
Agreed.
And in this case, I feel like yes, the villains are memorable and interesting, but it's Batman that's the most interesting character in his own movie, and then you
Right.
typically don't see that
Yeah,
in Batman
absolutely.
movies. So yeah, it's definitely, everybody should watch it. It's really good.
Yeah.
So what do you have next?
Well, one last thing before we move on. My favorite scene in Mask of the Phantasm is when Bruce Wayne is kneeling at his parents' graves. It's raining, you hear the Barbara Shirley's amazing score, and he's just talking to his parents, and he's second guessing himself and the mission to rid Gotham of all crime, and he is just like, I never counted on being happy, and it's just a combination of just many, many things that I love. I don't know about you, but that's my
Mm,
favorite scene in the movie.
it's so good. That's a really good scene. Then I also just love the scene, like I said, when he's talking to Alfred about that line between good and evil and walking it. I think that that's a very well done scene also.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Very good. All right, what's your next pick?
So my next choice is a movie called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. The word hidden gem is kind of loose in this case, but I feel like in terms of John Hughes movies, this is the one that normally doesn't get brought up a ton, which is my personal favorite. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is about two guys played by Steve Martin and John Candy. Steve Martin is trying to get from New York to Chicago to be with his family for Thanksgiving dinner. What he doesn't know is that the day before Thanksgiving is like the biggest travel day in the US, and everyone is trying to get somewhere, and it all goes straight to hell. So he tries getting John Candy to help him out, and of course, John Candy is a massive pain in the butt, and so the two are just going up against each other, clashing all the time, and it's just wonderful. John Hughes conquered the late 1980s with The Breakfast Club and Pretty in Pink, and of course this movie, and he also would end up writing the first two Home Alone movies and the first two National Lampoon Vacation movies. He could do no wrong in the late 80s. And I think that this movie is the funniest, but it also has a surprising amount of heart as well. Um, the scene where John Candy's character Del Gilbert basically tells Steve Martin, "I like me. My wife likes me." My heart breaks every time because you're just like, "Oh God, can we just please get rid of this guy?" But then you realize he's a human being too, and he's just trying to get somewhere too. So yelling at him is not going to help anything. So that's a great scene as well. But my one warning about the movie, though, is that if you're going to watch it with your family, there is one scene where Steve Martin uses several F words that rhyme with duck a lot of times, and it's pointed at the direction of Grace from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's a hilarious scene, but just it's it's not for kids. Let's just say that. But minus that, it is it's a really good movie, and it's got a great ending too. So, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoy this film. We were doing over on my friend David Healy, his Facebook page, he was doing an 80s tournament, like the funniest movies from the 80s. And
Mhm.
the thing, so Back to the Future ended up winning, and I'm like, I love Back to the Future. A few people love that movie more than I do, but I would barely call it a comedy. Like,
It's got funny moments, like when
yeah,
Marty McFly dresses up in the suit and tortures his father with the Van Halen music, and he's like,
yeah, like,
"Silence, Earthling."
like
Fine.
it's charming. And but I would say it's more like a sci-fi movie, I guess, is the genre I would put it in. But
It's a sci-fi comedy.
yeah, and so for me, like I was just I would pick Planes, Trains, and Automobile in that tournament over Back to the Future because it's to me way more of a comedy.
It is absolutely a comedy. It's like a
Yeah,
make no bones about it. This is
yeah.
a legit comedy.
I mean, and I particularly laugh in that movie whenever they're asked to like share a hotel room or a bed, and John Candy's just like the worst. You're just laughing.
Here's something you could do. Have a point. That makes it so much more entertaining for the listener.
Yeah. So
Oh
I
my
think it's a
God,
good
this movie's
choice.
so
Yeah,
great.
and it is R-rated, but it is at least in my memory, it's mostly just for that one scene.
It's for that one scene. If that were either toned down or edited out of the movie, it would have been PG by
Yeah,
all standards.
like it's the kind of movie that if they have on Vudu, they have you can watch. They have what's called Family Play.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if they have it for that movie, but it's the perfect kind of movie for that because if you watched it somewhat edited, it wouldn't hurt it at all. Like it wouldn't remove any of the artistic integrity, but it would just have that one scene. But I'm not saying you should, but I'm just saying that's like the perfect choice for that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a really funny movie, and I think because uh, I don't know, his teenage movies are just sort of more part of people's growing up. Those are the ones that sort of stay the longest, but it's a really good movie from him for sure.
I think objectively his best movie is The Breakfast Club. The funniest movie by far and away is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Like Breakfast
Yeah.
Club can be funny on occasions, but it's more of a drama, especially where they're all sitting together on that top level and they're talking about how they ended up in that situation. But that's another story for another time.
Yeah. Yeah. I I have mixed feelings on Breakfast Club, but I see the appeal of it, so I can understand.
Oh,
But anyway,
plot twist. We'll have to do like a like a Breakfast Club watch along or
yeah,
something.
I think it's a little overrated.
Like
Sorry.
I'll gush and you'll burst my bubble.
But it's I can see why people love it. But I love Some Kind of Wonderful. I think that one's way underrated of his. That one's one of my favorites. But anyway, let's move on. So my next choice is a documentary called Hoop Dreams, and this was a very important movie for me growing up. This is in the Criterion Collection section of the films on HBO Max, and this movie it was directed by Steve James, and basically he lived with these people for 7 years, documenting their lives and these two families, Arthur Agby and what's the guy's name, William Gates. And it's not about basketball. That's just kind of the conduit to connect them and to tell the story. It's about their lives and their families and dealing with poverty, and how both a dream can be a salvation but also be sort of a curse, and how the dream of getting to the NBA kind of gives them something to live for, but then also uh, kind of keeps lying to them in a way. And there's just some really wonderful moments, like when Arthur's mother graduates with her nursing degree, and you've just seen all that she's been through, horrible things, and have that moment of triumph is incredible. And it's very fly on the wall. It doesn't have like a ton of plot. It doesn't spoon feed it to you. Some people might find that boring. I don't. And when I saw this movie back in high school, I think I had an idea of kind of people on welfare, people that were, in on the other side of the tracks or whatever. And I had those foolish ideas, and then I saw this movie, and those people became real to me in a way that they hadn't before. So it really changed my life and changed my thoughts, and I just have always loved it. I think it's a great movie. It was really championed by Siskel and Ebert back in the day, and that's how I found out about it. And I love it. I think it tells a story in the way that only real life could tell a story. So if you haven't seen it, you should give it a shot.
I have not seen it, but I've heard about it for years, and it was like, all right, got to get around to Hoop Dreams, and I just never got the chance to. But now
Yeah,
it's going to be on HBO Max. I really have no excuse at this point.
no excuse. Of
Have you by
course,
chance seen a movie called When We Were Kings?
I've heard of that, but no, I haven't seen it.
Well, it's currently in the Criterion collection, and I was looking at the article that you sent me. We were talking about all the Criterion movies coming to HBO Max, and I'm like, When We Were Kings has got to be on here, right? And it's not, but it's basically it's basically a documentary about the Rumble in the Jungle, where Muhammad Ali fought
Oh,
George Foreman for the world heavyweight title in
yeah,
1974. And every time I think of Hoop Dreams and you were talking about Fly on the Wall, I was like, oh, Fly on the Wall. It's like When We Were Kings,
yeah,
because that's basically what the movie feels like. It's like we're along with Muhammad Ali as he trains for his big comeback fight after he was banned from the sport due to the whole thing with him in the Vietnam War. But that's neither here nor there.
yeah.
Uh, but Hoop Dreams sounds excellent. I love basketball movies, as we have more than documented on this podcast. So I'm surprised it's taken me this long to see Hoop Dreams. But again, I have no excuse at this point.
Well, I'll be very curious to hear what you think when you get to watch it. So, what do you have next?
So my next choice is a modern one from 2008, and it is called Speed Racer. This is from the Wachowskis. We all know who they are. And it is based on the long-running Japanese anime. And when this movie came out, I was pumped because my dad and I grew up watching the original Speed Racer anime, and I absolutely loved it. And I loved this movie, but I later realized that it was one of the biggest failures of 2008. I've seen the movie several times more after that, and I'm still scratching my head as to why that was the case, because this movie is just great on so many levels. It's got Emil Hirsch in it in his best role as Speed Racer. John Goodman is in it as Pops Racer, and he is just excellent as well. They have Racer X in here, and it is absolutely done about as perfect as you can do a Racer X storyline in a Speed Racer movie. And the biggest compliment that I could give is that this movie looks absolutely phenomenal. You know, for a 1970s anime, they just breathed new life into it, and they made the racetracks look so over the top, and they made the action scenes just so beautiful. Everything is in frame. When the cars are jumping around, it's not like a quick cam thing. You can actually see the cars moving around. And the fist fights, you feel like you're really there. And there's some comedy in there, and that works as well too. It's one of those things that was purposely over the top to service an over the top Japanese anime from the 1970s. That
Hmm.
is what Speed Racer is, and that is what we got. And it's got a great scene between Speed Racer and Racer X, where it has my favorite quote in the movie, where Racer X just says, "You don't climb into a T180 to be a driver. You do it because you're driven." Like, that's just hook that to my veins.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of people love this movie. Um, I don't love it.
Oh, Rachel, come
I know.
on.
I know. It's so much. I find it kind of exhausting. I feel I wish the
Okay,
movie
that I will acquiesce on. It is a lot. I
I
will
wish
say.
that it took more breaths. I honestly when I saw it, it actually made me sick. I back in the day. I have a very weak when it comes to motion sickness and stuff.
Okay,
And
that's understandable. That I can relate to.
but I just I've only seen it one time aside from the initial experience, and I still thought it was. I think I liked it better than I had first, but I still thought it was a lot. And thrown at the screen, all this like I felt it was one of those movies where I felt like they needed to like take their ideas and then deduct like two of them, three of them. Like the old Coco Chanel, like uh, before you leave, take one thing off, take two, one thing off before you leave, and you'll be perfect. um, and yeah, I I see why people love it. The bright colors, it is very inventive. There's new. It looks different than anything else that you've ever seen, and I can see why for its uniqueness, that it's so many people's favorites. So
I do understand why someone would have an upset stomach because of it, because especially the not the final, or especially the final scene where Speed just gets this new level of this new like fighting spirit, and he's climbing his way back. That those scenes do tend to run together a lot, and I was like, okay, this is getting a little busy. But
yeah, I think it would have been better if they had made it like 90 minutes. They're just like in, you're out, and but then it is a little crammed full, so maybe that wouldn't be better. But it's just for two over 2 hours, it's uh, I don't know. It's a long time to get those kind of visuals.
yeah, I can totally understand where you're coming from on that one.
Yeah. So like, you have to let us know if you're listening what you think of Speed Racer. I know a lot of people. It was on Conrado when I did the best of 2008 retrospective a couple of years ago. That was on his list. That's when I rewatched it again after all those years. And so anyway, so my last pick is also it's not just based on an anime, it is an actual anime. I'm called Kiki's Delivery Service, and this is by the great director Hayao Miyazaki. And
Legend.
yes, and he's so great at making stories about characters, particularly young girls, who are very honest about their emotions. And I think that what makes this movie particularly great is that you get to see Kiki deal with basically being depressed and how she's gonna like find her way out of it and how she does. And I don't know, so very few movies for children are that emotionally honest about things, and it's just about her growing up and her her coming to terms with that and sort of the loss of childhood. And I love Kiki. I think she's so sweet, and I feel for her when she's sad. And in the dub, you have Phil Hartman, doing the voice of the cat, and that's very nostalgic for me. And it's just got such a huge heart, this film, and it has all the great things that you want out of Studio Ghibli, the great animation, of course, the incredible sound design, where it really feels like they're flying. And uh, it also shows Kiki interacting with people from all different ages and not just kids her age. And I think that's a really good example too for young kids, to show that they really can make friends, and be that they don't only have to kind of be around people that are their age, and uh, that they have things in common with lots of different kinds of people. is good, I think, to show, and just what Kiki learns as she loses her magic for a time, and why that happens, and how she's able to kind of claw her way out of it is great. So I love it, and I think it's a really great starting off point for. It's not my favorite Studio Ghibli film, but I think it's a great one to start off because it's so gentle and sweet, and anybody can relate to it.
Yeah, I I've only seen like certain chunks of this movie. I remember seeing the scene where Kiki just falls into bed after the long day that she
Yeah.
had. And then the final scene where she finally gets her magic back, and it's like, oh, that's just so wonderful. And but I would have seen the whole thing during Studio Ghibli Fest of 2017. Context: my local movie theater every year has this thing called Studio Ghibli Fest, where either from January to August or August to December, they have one Studio Ghibli movie they show per month on certain days.
Yeah, I
And
loved that.
and I was planning on seeing Kiki's Delivery Service because the first one was Nausicaa, which I had already seen. And so I was like, okay, after Nausicaa is Kiki, and I'll definitely be there. I was going to see it, but then literally the day before, my movie theater called up and is like, hey, you got to come in. This person didn't show up and you got to work. And I'm like, ah, oh well.
Darn.
So I missed it.
Excuse me.
But when Studio Ghibli Fest does come back, and I fully believe that it will come back, I will definitely make my way to see all of them because I have now grown to truly appreciate movie theaters even more now that they are closed. And when they do eventually reopen, which I have a feeling will be sooner than later, I'll never make that mistake again.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. I feel the same way, and I don't. It's just a sweet, lovely little movie that I think that I think almost anybody will enjoy.
Yeah, the final scene where she like gets her magic back, she's on that broom and she's like, fly, and then boom,
Yeah.
she lifts off. I'm like, I'm not going to direct anything as good as that. I'm not sure if I should be sad or happy about that.
Well, and you feel such a victory for her because you know what she had to go through, and you can relate to it because we've all grown up and we've all had to deal with that transition.
Right.
So, what's your last pick?
So my last pick, and this may be a tad bit of a cheat, but it's all of the Lego movies, and I believe that they all exist in their own little world.
Uh huh.
And if you had to force like a gun to my head and choose, it would be Lego Batman movie. But I decided, and I passed it by you, Rachel, so it's good.
Yes,
I'm
I
choosing.
approve.
I'm
Even
choosing.
Ninjago, huh?
I'm choosing to count all of them because
Yeah.
they're all great. Uh, when the first Lego movie came out, I was like, they actually made a movie called the Lego Movie. Like, it's just going to be a 90-minute ad for Legos. Boy, how wrong I was, because that movie was surprisingly excellent. And then in 2017, they made the Lego Batman movie, which was just an which was just so funny on so many different levels, poking fun at all of the Batman mythos from Adam West to Christian Bale and
It's
Ben Affleck and everything in
yeah,
between.
especially in the first like 30 minutes, I feel like of that movie. That's
Right.
when most of the parody is.
Right. And then there's Lego Ninjago movie, which I feel like I may get roasted for, but I actually liked.
Uh-huh.
And then there's Lego Movie Part 2, which everybody seems to dislike but me. I surprisingly loved that movie,
Yeah.
especially the one scene where Tiffany Haddish, by the way, her best role, and Will Arnett as Batman do this duet where she's like, I'm just not into Batman, guys. And Batman's like trying to outdo Superman, and he's like, I'm better than that no good alien or some. I can't remember the lyrics at this particular second, but Lego Movie Part 2, people are just like, oh, this is the subpar Lego movie. I'm like, what are you on? This movie's excellent. Like, it's got a great message. It's really funny. Chris,
Yeah.
Pratt, as per usual, is excellent. Will Arnett is funny as hell as Batman, and it's got so many layers to it that just people, I guess, just seemed to miss. But I love all of the Lego movies equally.
Yeah, so I love the original, and to me it's kind of bizarre that people were so down on it, because it's one thing to make a movie about toys, but in the case of the Lego movie, where they're just literally like blocks to building characters, I think it's a sort of a different situation than the typical movie about toys. Because they
Right.
had so much more they could do with it, and there's so many IPs within Lego, as opposed to most movies about toys where there's just one IP, the toy.
What
um
what got to me was all of the NBA All Stars, like
yeah.
Shaquille O'Neal.
Well, and I love how they decided to make Green Lantern and Superman, like, kind of, Superman's so irritated with Green Lantern. I think that's funny.
Who were voiced by Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill,
Yeah,
respectively.
yeah. And so yeah, I mean, Lego Batman, I enjoyed. I do think it's kind of top heavy for me. I get a little bit as the climax with where they're bringing in Lord of the Rings, and it gets a little not as good in that second half, but I still overall liked the film. I wish that it was as visually interesting as the first Lego movie. The fact they got rid of the water and just made it ordinary water was disappointing. I don't know, it's a nitpick, but I didn't like it personally as much as the first Lego movie. But then Lego Ninjago, I just thought was really boring. I don't know, the humor didn't work for me. The only part that I really liked in Lego Ninjago was the cat. That was hilarious. Cat Godzilla. That was really funny, but I don't know, it didn't. I'm in the group that one didn't really work. And then uh and then the Lego Movie Part 2, I've actually only seen it once. I really need to revisit it because I watched it the week of Sundance that year, and so it was a pretty exhausting time. But I did give it fresh, and I did enjoy it, and I thought it was pretty creative. But I haven't seen it in a long time, so perfect to have it on HBO Max. I'll be able to watch it. I mean, I own it, so I should watch it. But anyway, so yeah, I enjoyed that as well, and I'm a little nervous now that Universal has purchased the Lego Group, whatever, because I don't really like particularly Illumination. Their movies aren't my favorite. And so you take something
Yeah,
that was
I'm
like experimental and kind of different and took risks and tried things, to a studio that has never done that. I mean, you can like Illumination films, and that's fine, but you cannot make the claim that they are risk takers at all. They're not at all.
Illumination movies have a formula, and I picked up on it real quick. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to bury Illumination or anything, but it's just, most movies have formulas, and it's just
Yeah.
like you either pick up on it or you don't.
Yeah.
And I've picked up on it. Minus like the first Despicable Me movie, maybe the first Secret Life of Pets movie. There isn't one that was just like, oh, that was great. Most of them are just mediocre to me.
Yeah.
Minus Sing, I wasn't a particularly big fan of that one.
Yeah. I like Sing, but uh, none of their movies take are risk taker movies. And I don't know. So I'm nervous about the studio buying that. Like, oh, but we'll see. We'll see what they come up with. Who knows? So very good. I support your cheat pick.
Yeah, that's why I ran it by you first. I was like, if you have to force me to pick one,
Yeah.
I'll pick Lego Batman. But you allowed me to choose all of them, so
Yeah.
I'll just go with all of them because I'm an equal opportunity Lego movie
Yeah.
lover.
Very good. So there we go. That's our picks for HBO Max Hidden Gems. Let us know what you are looking forward to with the service and what you are going to be watching, some hidden gems. We'd love to know your thoughts. We'll definitely be doing multiple episodes of HBO Max because there's tons on there. So nobody's allowed to be bored these days. I don't want to hear
Right.
it. There's no shortage of entertainment for all of us. So very good. Well, Ryan, how can people find you?
Well, first, let's run down our lists.
Oh, right. So yes, let's run down our list. So first I have Bringing Up Baby. Then I have The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Then Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And then Hoop Dreams. And finally Kiki's Delivery Service.
And all of my choices are The Kid, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Speed Racer, and all of the Lego movies.
Yeah. I think it'd be a pretty good watch if you watched all of these movies. It'd be pretty fun. So Ryan, where can people find you?
So you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RyanCam20. And then on my channel, it's Ryan Cam Movie Reviews. I've got a bunch of stuff coming up for the AFI project. Coming up, I'll be reviewing the original Star Wars, Psycho, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and Sunset Boulevard. And that's just really the tip of the iceberg on that one. And then the Avatar vlogs, where I talk about the last Avatar: The Last Airbender. That is currently in the can. I just gotta edit it, and that'll be coming up sometime this week.
Sounds like some great stuff coming up. So check
Yeah,
that out.
it's I've just been making the best because no new releases are coming out for at least until July, fingers crossed. So I'm just trying to make the best out of it. And actually, Rachel, I'm sorry to eat into time, but one last thing. In the month of June, I'm going to be declaring June Nolan month over on my channel. I'm going to be reviewing every movie directed by Christopher Nolan in honor of Tenet, hopefully coming out in theaters on July 17th. It's still holding the date, and I have a feeling that it's going to stay there. I'm the optimist, but I'm having a feeling that it's going to stay there.
Let's hope. Oh, please. So that sounds great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. There's also the Criterion Project, which is a lot of fun. And then I have the Hallmarkies podcast. So all of that is some pretty great content. So please check it out. And we just finished a Muppet May this week on my channel for Family Movie Night. And we had guest visitor Bongo as our guest review for Muppets Wizard of Oz. So that's a once in a lifetime. You're not going to get that again. So make sure to check that out. I would really appreciate it. And thanks again, everybody. And let us know your picks and what you think of our picks. And thanks so much. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye, everyone.
See you all next week.